Hey there, Gabriel Nekashea here, King of Orion. Long ago, and on a distant planet, Earth, specifically Greece, way back when all those wise guys were running around talking philosophy. I'm talking Plato, Socrates, or Socrates if you're a man of character. There was this guy named Diogenes. And I remember his name because it sounds very much like doggy knees. But Diogenes was the first cynic. Now, cynic back then didn't mean what it means today. Cynic meant dog-like. Canine comes from the same etymological root. Things are canids, like wolves and things like that. Very similar word origin for those as with the cynics. And cynics, specifically, didn't trust authority. Diogenes was the first punk. Technically, Jesus was the first punk, and you can look back throughout history. There have been many punks. There are a lot of folks who tend to get out there and stir up trouble. The War of the Three, Romance of the Three Kingdoms, full of punks. Every one of those dudes who led an army and was like, "I'm going to be the king," punk. But Diogenes the Cynic was very much into the idea of living freely. Now, there's this spectrum between absolute freedom and absolute security. And Diogenes was over here in absolute freedom land, living out of a wine cask. This is back before they fully understood the health risks associated with drinking. When all of the best philosophers were drinkers. Christopher Hitchens does a pretty mean song in reference to that in one of his old videos, talking about how each of them was a drinker. But Diogenes himself was not necessarily a hedonist, he was a cynic. Now, the hedonists had a very specific way of approaching life. They thought pleasure above all. If it is something to be enjoyed, it is something to be pursued. And so they chased sex, drugs, and rock and roll, man. More punks. It's nothing but punks all the way back. And those hedonists ended up not being happy over the long haul. And the reason is because sex, drugs, and rock and roll are expensive, and there are better versions of each of those things moving down the line. There's sex with the missus. There's sex with a stranger. And then there's paying for sex. And then there's, like, paying for evil sex. The weird stuff. Yeah, not cool. Diogenes was of the opinion that his hand was perfectly fine. Which, in this day and age, I think most dudes online get that to some extent. But the reason he felt that way came from a sort of gratitude and a sort of not self-importance, but appreciation for self. He knew the limits of his capabilities. And he knew that he stank, he reeked. Diogenes smelled like dogs everywhere he went. Because he lived like a dog. He lived among dogs in a wine cask. Now, wine back then was not the same as wine these days. It was bigger back then. These days, the best sort of wine you can find on the cheap comes in these big glass bottles, which I like to put iced coffee in. And like, oh man, iced coffee out of the fridge. I could really go for an iced coffee right now. But Diogenes himself was very stoic in this regard. He wasn't a stoic, but he was very stoic in this regard. If I wanted to talk about the Stoics, I'd get into Marcus Aurelius and his meditations. I would get into I don't think I'd get into Scipio or any of those badasses, military history types. But there's a lot of like wise guys who figured out through trial and error, hey man, I should probably be as capable as humanly possible to live as human an experience as possible. And then that includes disabilities and overcoming them. Going back through history, there's plenty of folks out there who I would point to and be like, yep, that guy was a stoic, whether they talked about it or not. But Diogenes is famous for a number of stories. This is back when Socrates and Plato and all those other wise guys were doing things like the dialectics and like the Republic. Plato's Republic is a huge, huge text within philosophy. Diogenes didn't write. We only know things about him secondhand, which makes him literally a legend. The legend of Diogenes. But one of the stories we know about him is the first recorded instance of someone just coming in with the chair and laying out someone else. I've heard people compare, what's his name? Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan to Plato, you know? Plato means broad, and it's because he had a big old broad face and like he was a wrestler. Plato was a pro wrestler back in the day when wrestling was huge. And nowadays, we don't have wrestling. We have MMA. Very different sports. Totally different. Never fixed. Wrestling was super fixed back in the day. There were a lot of folks who were canny and who knew how to play the system to succeed. Now I suspect Plato was one of these enlightened individuals, mainly because of his friendship with Socrates. But legend has it that Plato and Socrates were talking with a bunch of other sophists and wise guys, people of wealth, and I mean not just money, people of wealth. And they asked one another, what is man? And like Dracula didn't move in and say a miserable pile of secrets or anything like that. Man, as defined by, I don't remember who, Socrates maybe, Socrates, is not a miserable pile of secrets. He is a featherless biped. And so, serendipitously, off stage, somehow, Diogenes hears this and comes in with a plucked chicken. I don't know if he's fresh plucked. I don't know if he's plucked after the conversation concludes. I don't know if Diogenes is just that petty and vindictive. Like, how dare you say man is merely a featherless biped? He comes in with this plucked chicken and throws it in the middle of the forum. Because they had forums back there. Fora. But in the middle of the forum and says, behold, man. And whoever it was who opened their mouth, Plato or Socrates, I assume Socrates because he was the teacher, but probably Plato because he was the student. Who knows? Who cares? This is just myths and legend. Changed his definition of man to a featherless biped with broad nails. Simply legendary. Like, just with the chair, like, bah! Your argument is invalid. Here is an example. And like, wrong, sir, wrong. And that sort of story is probably not funny to you, but maybe. Who knows? I'm not sure how to relate this to Eve Echoes other than the idea of rolling your own and pursuing freedom even at the cost of security. The one course... So, I'm a graduate of the Air Force Academy. Like, I've got the whole plaque nonsense and shenanigans and all that stuff. There is a small technical school down in Colorado Springs that is drier than BYU. They have one bar, and they serve beer and cider. Hap's Place. It's happening. No. No, it wasn't. As a graduate of the Air Force Academy, I failed one class. Astronautical engineering. I am addicted to space games out of sheer vindictiveness. I joined the military as an act of rebellion. Nothing about me makes sense. But failing that one course denied me a minor in French and a minor in philosophy. I'm an English major who missed out on a minor in French and a minor in philosophy. So expect to hear more talk of philosophy when it comes to Eve Echoes. And in my writings surrounding Eve Echoes, because there's a lot of like really cool stories. Oh, tangential. I suspect David Weber, author of the Honor Harrington series. I don't remember if it's David Weber. I'm pretty sure it's David Weber. Wrote the Honor Harrington series, which is a fantastic series in its own right, by the way. It's Horatio Hornblower in space, which has never been more relevant than it is now. Really good. I love Honor. Another Academy thing. Integrity first, service before self, excellence in all we do, that nonsense. Expect to see more stories in the future. I'm going to start reading Operation Ignition missions. I'm going to read the op horde from beginning to end. Ideally after I've finished reading Tilt, but maybe in parallel, who knows? I've got a whole lot of free time and not a lot of money. So, thanks for sticking around. Hopefully you like stories. Hopefully you like philosophy. I'm not going to try French. If you try and speak French in Paris and you are not good at it, they will judge you so hard. And a lot of this, I suspect, stems from the fact that French is the one language that is actually culturally preserved. There is a school of French, and it's really cool because you can chart how the language evolves into other languages as they spiral out from France itself. So like Cajun, totally different feeling, those words, than French proper French. Canadian, totally different feeling. At least experience. African, Mandingo, any of those, like African as if Africa. So Africa, culturally speaking, has so many languages. Ethiopia alone has over 100. Really cool. And all of this is to say, I can't speak French, but I can tell stories. Have a good one. Bye.